October 1988. The Plaza Hotel, New York City. Workers in coveralls move through the Oak Room, prying century-old brass fixtures from mahogany walls that haven't changed since the hotel opened in 1907. 80 years of tradition stripped away in a single afternoon because the new owner wants everything modernized and monetized. The most famous hotel in America isn't being renovated. It's being gutted for cash by a man who borrowed nearly $500 million to buy it. 2 women didn't die here, but something did. The soul of an institution, the culture built by generations of staff and guests, the irreplaceable character that made the Plaza more than just another luxury address. To understand how America's most beloved hotel became a battlefield for ego and greed, we need to go back to when the Plaza was just a vision in the mind of a man who wanted to build something the world had never seen. If you're interested in the dark side of America's Gilded Age fortunes, please consider subscribing. The Plaza Hotel sits at the corner of 5th Avenue and Central Park South. 18 stories of French Renaissance limestone facing the most valuable real estate in America. For over a century, this address has meant something specific: wealth, glamour, the unmistakable announcement that you have arrived. Step through those revolving doors, and you enter a world designed to make ordinary life feel distant. The marble floors echo with footsteps of everyone who mattered in American history. The chandeliers cast light that flatters even the most exhausted traveler. This is not just a hotel. This is a stage. The building has appeared in more films than most actors. Alfred Hitchcock shot scenes here for North by Northwest. The Plaza played itself in The Great Gatsby, both versions. Home Alone 2 turned the lobby into a playground for a lost child with a stolen credit card. Crocodile Dundee wandered these halls confused by American luxury. Almost every romantic comedy set in New York eventually finds its way to the Plaza's doors. When filmmakers need shorthand for wealth and sophistication, they point cameras at this facade. The building has become a character in America's story about itself. The numbers tell part of the story. When the current Plaza opened on October 1, 1907, construction had cost $12.5 million. That's roughly $400 million adjusted for inflation. The original design included 800 guest rooms spread across 19 floors. The building contained 500 private bathrooms at a time when most hotels offered shared facilities down the hall. This was revolutionary luxury. Indoor plumbing for every guest, telephones in every room, a pneumatic tube system that whisked messages between floors faster than any bellhop could run. The craftsmanship matched the technology. The lobby required enough marble to cover a city block. Workers installed 1,650 crystal chandeliers throughout the building. The Palm Court featured a stained glass ceiling that transformed afternoon tea into something approaching religious experience. The Oak Room's paneling came from forests that no longer exist. The Oak Bar's murals depicted scenes of old New York that were already vanishing when the paint dried. Every detail announced permanence. This building was constructed to outlast the people who built it, but statistics miss what made the Plaza matter. This wasn't just an expensive hotel. It was the place where American wealth performed for itself and the world. The guest registers read like a history of the 20th century written in signatures. Mark Twain stayed here in the Plaza's early years. He held court in the lobby, dispensing wit to anyone who approached. F. Scott Fitzgerald checked in repeatedly during the 1920s. He was eventually banned for swimming drunk in the Pulitzer Fountain outside. The incident became legend. Fitzgerald didn't seem to mind. The Plaza appeared in his fiction as a symbol of everything glamorous and doomed about the American dream. The Beatles occupied an entire floor in February 1964. Fans surrounded the building for days. Police struggled to maintain order. The band held press conferences in suites that had hosted royalty. Frank Lloyd Wright lived at the Plaza for years, while designing the Guggenheim Museum. He complained constantly about the room rates while refusing to leave. Truman Capote hosted his legendary black and white ball in the Grand Ballroom in 1966. The guest list included everyone from Frank Sinatra to the Kansas couple who had inspired In Cold Blood. The party cost a fortune and achieved exactly what Capote intended. It announced that the plaza remained the center of American social life. Every president from Theodore Roosevelt onward walked through those doors at some point. Foreign heads of state considered the plaza the only acceptable address in New York. The hotel hosted treaty negotiations, secret meetings, and diplomatic receptions that shaped world events. Decisions made in these suites affected millions of people who would never see the inside of the building. Power concentrated here because powerful people expected to find each other here. The plaza also housed permanent residents. This distinguished it from ordinary hotels. Wealthy widows moved in after their husbands died, preferring hotel service to maintaining vast apartments alone. Retired industrialists took suites and never left. Eccentric heiresses chose the plaza over family mansions because staff handled every inconvenience. Some families occupied the same suites for generations, passing them down, like inherited property. Children grew up in these rooms. They learned to walk in hallways designed for visiting dignitaries. These permanent residents weren't guests, they were neighbors. They ate breakfast together in the Palm Court. They recognized each other's voices in the elevators. They knew the doormen by name. The doormen knew their children and eventually their grandchildren. This created something rare in New York City, a community built on continuity rather than transaction. The hotel functioned as a village inside a building. Residents looked out for each other. Staff became extended family. The longest-serving employees had watched generations grow up within these walls. Kay Thompson understood this when she created Eloise. The children's book about a girl who lives at the plaza captured something true. The hotel really did contain a secret world. Behind the public grandeur existed a private community with its own rules and rhythms. Eloise ran through halls that real children had run through for decades. She ordered room service because real residents ordered room service daily. The book became beloved because it revealed what permanent guests already knew. Living at the plaza meant belonging to something. For most of its history, the hotel changed hands rarely. The original developers held it for decades. When ownership did transfer, buyers understood they were purchasing an institution, not just real estate, not just a famous name. They were acquiring responsibility for something that mattered to people beyond the transaction. New owners maintained standards because the staff expected standards. They preserved traditions because guests returned expecting traditions. They recognized that the plaza's value came from intangible things no appraiser could quantify. Then the ownership carousel began spinning faster. Conrad Hilton bought the plaza in 1943. He approached the acquisition as a business optimization problem. Efficiency increased, character decreased. Westin Hotels acquired the property later. Each corporate transition brought subtle changes. Cost reductions disguised as modernization. Staff cuts justified by new management systems. Small compromises that individually seemed reasonable, but collectively eroded something essential. The permanent residents noticed first. Staff turnover accelerated. Familiar faces disappeared without explanation. New employees didn't know the residents' names or preferences. The hotel started feeling less like a home and more like a business that happened to contain their apartments. Some residents complained. Others simply accepted the changes as inevitable. A few began looking for alternatives, though leaving the plaza meant abandoning decades of accumulated life. By the 1980s, the plaza had become a trophy property, the most famous hotel in America, available to whoever could write the largest check. This attracted a new type of buyer. Developers who saw potential in the land more than the building. Financiers who understood the brand value but not the institutional responsibility. The building occupied some of Manhattan's most valuable real estate. Those 800 guest rooms could become luxury condominiums worth tens of millions each. The apartments housing permanent residents could be converted and sold for enormous profit. The math was tempting. Gut the operations, keep the facade, extract maximum value. In 1986, the plaza received crucial protection. The New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission designated key interior spaces as landmarks. The Palm Court with its famous ceiling, the Oak Room and Oak Bar with their irreplaceable woodwork, the Grand Ballroom where Capote had thrown his legendary party. These spaces couldn't be altered without commission approval. The designation recognized what preservationists had argued for years. The plaza's significance extended beyond its famous limestone exterior. The interior spaces represented craftsmanship that could never be replicated, but landmark status had limits. It protected physical spaces from demolition or drastic alteration. It couldn't protect culture. It couldn't prevent new owners from firing longtime staff. It couldn't stop someone from eliminating the services that made permanent residents feel at home. It couldn't preserve the intangible community that had developed over decades. A developer could hollow out everything that made the plaza more than just a beautiful building while technically complying with landmark regulations. The hotel went up for sale in 1988. Multiple buyers expressed interest. The asking price exceeded $400 million for the building and the business. For that sum, a buyer would acquire not just real estate, but a piece of American mythology. The question was whether any buyer would understand what they were actually purchasing, whether anyone would protect what couldn't appear on a balance sheet, whether the plaza would find an owner who loved it or merely wanted to own it. The battles over the plaza would involve some of America's most notorious figures: real estate developers with enormous ambitions and larger debts, billionaires from multiple continents seeking trophy properties, foreign sovereign wealth funds treating American landmarks as investment vehicles. Each would make promises about restoration and preservation. Few would keep them. The hotel that seemed eternal was about to discover how quickly institutions can be destroyed by people who see only dollar signs. But before the celebrities and scandals, before the bankruptcies and lawsuits, there was a man with a vision. His name was Harry Black, and in 1905 he decided to tear down the old plaza and build something the world had never seen. Harry S. Black was not a hotelier, he was a deal maker. Born in 1863 in Ontario, Canada, he came to America as a young man seeking opportunity. He found it in construction, not in laying bricks, but in financing buildings. By the 1890s, Black had risen to lead the George A. Fuller Company, one of America's largest construction firms. Fuller built skyscrapers. They pioneered techniques that made tall buildings possible. Black understood that the real money wasn't in construction itself. The real money was in controlling the land beneath the buildings. In 1901, Black engineered a merger that created U.S. Realty and Construction Company. The new corporation controlled Fuller Construction and vast Manhattan real estate holdings. Black became president of the combined enterprise. He was 38 years old and already one of the most powerful men in New York real estate. His ambition was limitless. He wanted to build monuments that would outlast him. The original Plaza Hotel had opened in 1890 at the corner of 5th Avenue and 59th Street. It was successful but unremarkable, an 8-story brick building that looked dated almost immediately. By 1905, the neighborhood had transformed around it. Central Park had matured into the city's great green escape. 5th Avenue was becoming the most prestigious address in America. The old plaza no longer matched its surroundings. Black saw opportunity where others saw an adequate hotel. He convinced investors to demolish the existing building and construct something unprecedented. Not just a larger hotel, the largest hotel, the most luxurious hotel, a building that would define what American hospitality could become. Black assembled financing of $12.5 million. In 1905 dollars, this was an extraordinary sum. It signaled that the new plaza would spare no expense. For architect, Black chose Henry Janeway Hardenberg. The selection was deliberate. Hardenberg had already designed two of America's most famous buildings. The Dakota Apartment House on Central Park West, completed in 1884. The original Waldorf Astoria Hotel on Fifth Avenue, completed in stages between 1893 and 1897. He understood how to design buildings that announced their importance from blocks away. He knew how to create spaces that made wealthy people feel appropriately celebrated. Hardenberg proposed a French Renaissance chateau design. 19 stories of limestone and brick rising above the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South. The style referenced European aristocracy without copying it directly. This was American wealth creating its own traditions. The building would feature a distinctive green copper roof, visible from throughout the southern end of Central Park. Twin towers would frame the main facade. The entrance would open onto a grand lobby designed to humble visitors with its scale. Construction began in 1905 and proceeded rapidly. The site posed challenges. Building on a corner lot meant coordinating two street frontages. The desired height required innovative structural engineering. Workers drove foundation pilings deep into Manhattan bedrock. The steel skeleton rose floor by floor through 1906. By early 1907, the exterior was largely complete. Interior finishing consumed the remaining months. The craftsmanship inside matched the ambition outside. Hardenberg specified materials from around the world. Italian marble for the floors and columns, crystal from Europe for the chandeliers, rare woods for the paneling in public rooms. The Palm Court received special attention. This space would serve afternoon tea beneath a vaulted ceiling of stained glass. The light filtering through that glass would become famous. Photographers would seek it for decades. The Oak Room and Oak Bar occupied prominent ground floor locations. Hardenberg designed them as masculine retreats, dark wood paneling, murals depicting outdoor scenes. Heavy furniture meant for serious men conducting serious business. Women would not be permitted in these spaces for decades. The segregation reflected the era's assumptions. It would eventually embarrass the hotel. But in 1907, it seemed natural, even refined. Guest rooms incorporated technology that amazed visitors. Every room had its own telephone connected to a central switchboard. Every room had its own bathroom with hot and cold running water. A pneumatic tube system allowed messages to travel between floors almost instantly. Central heating kept the entire building comfortable regardless of weather. These features seem ordinary now. In 1907, they represented the cutting edge of hospitality. The plaza opened on October 1, 1907. New York society treated the event as a major occasion. The New York Times devoted extensive coverage. The hotel was fully booked before the doors opened. Waiting lists formed immediately for future reservations. Suites that were expected to rent by the week attracted tenants who wanted them by the year. Black had succeeded beyond reasonable expectation. He'd built not just a hotel, but a destination. The plaza immediately became the address for visiting dignitaries and American aristocrats alike. The building dominated its corner of Fifth Avenue. The green copper roof could be seen from throughout Midtown. The facade announced wealth and permanence with every carved detail. The financial returns matched the architectural triumph. The hotel generated strong revenue from its first full year. Room rates far exceeded competitors. The permanent residents provided steady income regardless of seasonal fluctuations. Black's investment was paying off handsomely. But Black's personal story would take darker turns. His ambition extended beyond the plaza. He continued expanding U.S. Realty's holdings through the 1910s and 1920s. When the stock market crashed in 1929, Black's empire collapsed with it. Properties that had seemed valuable became worthless. Debts that had seemed manageable became crushing. On July 19, 1930, Harry Black died by suicide in his Long Island home. He was 67 years old. The man who built the plaza never recovered from losing his fortune. The pattern would repeat. Builders who created monuments often didn't live to enjoy them. The plaza would outlast Harry Black and every subsequent owner. The chandeliers would keep burning while empires rose and fell around them. The building didn't care who held the deed. It just survived. Hardenberg lived longer than Black, but saw his reputation fade. Architectural tastes shifted after World War I. The ornate styles he'd mastered fell out of fashion. Modernism demanded simplicity. Hardenberg's elaborate facades seemed old-fashioned to younger architects. He died in 1918, just 11 years after the plaza opened. His obituaries praised the building he designed. They called it his masterpiece. The assessment has held for over a century. The plaza that Black and Hardenberg created in 1907 was designed to impress. It succeeded. But a hotel is not a house. It doesn't belong to one family generation after generation. It belongs to everyone who walks through its doors. It belongs to the guests who sleep in its beds, and the staff who change those sheets. And ultimately, it belongs to whoever holds the deed. The story of who stayed at the plaza is inseparable from the story of who owned it. Each owner left marks. Some preserved what they inherited. Others extracted what they could and moved on. The building absorbed every change and kept standing. It would need that resilience. The century ahead would test it repeatedly. Walking into the plaza in 1920 was like entering a small European kingdom transplanted to Manhattan. The lobby announced importance before you spoke to anyone. Marble columns rose toward distant ceilings. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across floors polished to mirror shine. Bellhops in immaculate uniforms moved with military precision. The message was clear. You had arrived somewhere that mattered. The staff operated according to unwritten hierarchies. The concierge knew everything about everyone. He tracked preferences, allergies, and affairs with equal discretion. Head waiters commanded their dining rooms like generals. They remembered which guests preferred which tables. They knew who tipped generously and who didn't. This knowledge translated into service, calibrated to the guest's precise social position. Doormen stood outside through every season. Summer heat and winter blizzards treated identically. They recognized residents by footstep before faces came into view. They hailed cabs with gestures that seemed effortless, but required years to perfect. A good plaza doorman made arriving feel like a ceremony. Guests noticed when their usual doorman was absent. The consistency mattered. The permanent residents formed their own society within the hotel. Wealthy widows dominated this population, women whose husbands had died, leaving fortunes too large to manage alone. Hotel living solved problems that maintaining private homes created. No need to hire servants, no worry about repairs, no loneliness in vast empty rooms. The plaza's staff handled everything while providing constant human contact. These residents occupied suites on the upper floors. Some decorated their spaces with personal furniture shipped from family estates. Others accepted the hotel's furnishings and added only photographs and books. Either way, they made these rooms home. Children were born in these suites. Elderly residents died in them. Decades passed within the same walls. The Palm Court served as the social center. Afternoon tea arrived precisely at 4 o'clock. Silver pots and delicate cups on white tablecloths beneath that famous stained glass ceiling. The light through the glass shifted with weather and season. Rainy afternoons cast different colors than sunny ones. Regulars noticed these changes and commented on them. The Palm Court created its own world with its own rhythms. Women met there to exchange information that couldn't be shared elsewhere. Engagements were announced over tea before appearing in newspapers. Divorces were whispered about while spreading marmalade. Business deals were discussed in language coded to exclude eavesdroppers. The Palm Court functioned as an intelligence exchange where reputation was the currency. The Oak Room operated by different rules. This was masculine territory. Dark paneling absorbed sound and light equally. Men conducted business over heavy meals and stronger drinks. The room didn't admit women until 1969 for 6 decades. It remained a male sanctuary where deals were made without feminine distraction. The exclusion seems absurd now. Then it seemed natural. The Oak Bar next door followed similar policies. Lawyers and bankers gathered after market close. They dissected the day's events in leather chairs designed to encourage long conversations. Murals on the walls depicted pastoral scenes that contrasted sharply with the urban intensity of the conversations below. Men who spent their days in office towers appreciated these painted forests and fields. The Persian Room offered evening entertainment, a nightclub within the hotel where society came to dance and be seen. Eartha Kitt performed there during her rise to fame. Hildegard drew crowds who dressed for the occasion. The room featured a stage and dance floor surrounded by tables where guests ordered champagne and pretended not to watch each other. Seeing and being seen was the entire point. The Grand Ballroom hosted events that made social pages across the country. Debutante balls introduced young women to society. Charity galas raised millions for approved causes. Corporate celebrations rewarded executives with evenings of orchestrated elegance. The room could accommodate over 1,000 guests. Its chandeliers alone required a full-time maintenance crew. Truman Capote understood the plaza's social power when he chose it for his black and white ball in November 1966. The guest list became front-page news weeks before the event. 500 people received invitations to what newspapers called the Party of the Century. Capote mixed celebrities with Kansas farmers. He sat Frank Sinatra next to women who'd never heard of him. The evening demonstrated that whoever controlled the plaza's ballroom controlled New York society. The hotel attracted guests who defined their eras. F. Scott Fitzgerald stayed repeatedly during the 1920s. He treated the plaza as his personal stage. One evening, he stripped down and dove into the Pulitzer fountain outside. Management banned him afterward. Fitzgerald seemed delighted by the scandal. The incident became part of his legend. The Beatles arrived in February 1964 and transformed the hotel into a media circus. Fans surrounded the building for days. Police struggled to maintain order. The band held press conferences in suites that normally housed dignified businessmen. Teenage screams echoed through halls designed for whispered conversation. The plaza had never experienced anything like it. The staff adapted with characteristic professionalism. Frank Lloyd Wright lived at the plaza for years while designing the Guggenheim Museum. He complained constantly about noise and service and rates. He threatened to leave repeatedly. He never did. The hotel tolerated his eccentricities because his presence brought prestige. Famous architects staying at your hotel announced that your hotel mattered to people who cared about beauty. Guests arrived from every corner of power. Foreign heads of state considered the plaza the only acceptable New York address. Presidents from both parties attended events in the ballroom. Corporate titans negotiated mergers over dinner. The hotel functioned as neutral territory where rivals could meet without surrendering advantage. The plaza's reputation guaranteed discretion. The staff who made this world function rarely received public recognition. Housekeepers who changed sheets for decades. Elevator operators who learned every resident's floor without being told. Kitchen workers who prepared thousands of meals to exacting standards. These employees passed skills to younger workers in informal apprenticeships, the knowledge accumulated across generations. Some staff families worked at the plaza for multiple generations. Sons followed fathers into service positions. Daughters joined mothers in housekeeping departments. The hotel became family business for people who never held ownership stakes. Their pride was real. They maintained standards even when management changed or budgets tightened. Kay Thompson captured something essential when she created Eloise in 1955. Her children's book depicted a girl who lived at the plaza and treated it as her personal playground. Eloise ran through halls that adults walked. She knew secret passages and hidden rooms. She formed relationships with staff who indulged her adventures. The book sold millions of copies and introduced the hotel to children who would grow up dreaming of staying there. Eloise worked because it described something true. The plaza really did contain secret worlds. Behind the public grandeur existed private communities. The permanent residents knew passageways that tourists never discovered. Staff used service corridors invisible to guests. Multiple realities coexisted within the same building. The hotel accommodated them all. For half a century, the plaza seemed eternal. The routines felt permanent. The standards never wavered. Guests returned year after year and found the same doormen greeting them. The same waiters remembered their preferences. The same light filtered through the palm court ceiling. This consistency created something rare, a place where time seemed to move differently, where the chaos of the outside world couldn't penetrate. But hotels are businesses. They have balance sheets and shareholders and quarterly reports. They require constant investment just to maintain existing standards. And in the 1970s, the plaza's numbers started telling a different story. The plaza changed hands for the first time in 1943. Conrad Hilton purchased the hotel as part of his aggressive expansion across America. He'd built his fortune buying distressed properties during the Depression. The plaza wasn't distressed, it was prestigious. Hilton wanted the name more than the building. Hilton approached the plaza as an efficiency problem. His chain operated on standardized systems designed to maximize profit. Every Hilton hotel used the same accounting methods, the same training programs, the same performance metrics. This worked well for roadside motor lodges. It fit awkwardly with an institution that had developed its own culture over 4 decades. The changes came gradually. Staff positions were consolidated. Departments that had operated independently now reported through corporate hierarchies. Long-serving employees who remembered the original ways found their expertise undervalued. The new management wanted consistency with other Hilton properties. The plaza's distinctiveness was a problem to be solved. Some traditions survived. The Palm Court still served afternoon tea. The Oak Room still excluded women. The permanent residents still occupied their suites. But the texture changed. Small economies accumulated. Slightly cheaper supplies. Slightly less elaborate service. Slightly fewer staff members covering slightly more responsibilities. Each individual compromise seemed minor. Together they shifted something fundamental. Hilton sold the plaza in 1953 to a real estate investor named A.M. Sonnabend. The price was $15 million. Sonnabend understood hotels, but approached them as properties, rather than institutions. His company managed the plaza competently, without inspiring devotion. The building continued functioning. The standards held. Nothing got dramatically better or worse. The 1970s brought crisis to New York City. Municipal bankruptcy loomed. Crime rates spiked. Wealthy residents fled to suburbs. Companies relocated headquarters to other states. The city that had seemed like the center of the world suddenly seemed like a dangerous backwater. Tourism declined sharply. Business travel shifted elsewhere. The plaza felt these pressures acutely. Occupancy rates dropped. The permanent residents aged without replacement. Young, wealthy families didn't want to raise children in a city that felt unsafe. They chose Connecticut or Westchester instead. The suites that had housed multiple generations of families started emptying as elderly residents died. Maintenance costs never declined regardless of revenue. The building required constant attention. Pipes corroded. Electrical systems needed updating. The limestone facade weathered and required repair. The famous chandeliers demanded specialized cleaning. Running an 80-year-old building cost substantially more than running a modern one. Every year brought new expenses that couldn't be avoided. Westin Hotels acquired the Plaza in 1975. Another corporate owner, another set of standardized procedures. Westin had less history than Hilton, but similar approaches. Efficiency mattered. Brand consistency mattered. The Plaza's unique character was an asset in marketing materials and a complication in operations. The permanent residents watched these transitions with growing unease. Each new owner brought new rules, new restrictions on what residents could do in spaces they'd occupied for decades, new staff members who didn't know family histories, new managers who viewed longtime residents as obstacles rather than community members. Some residents had legal protections. New York's rent stabilization laws applied to certain long-term tenants. These residents couldn't be easily displaced. Their rents couldn't be raised dramatically. They had rights that new owners found inconvenient. The tension between protected tenants and profit-seeking owners would intensify over the following decades. In 1969, the Oak Room finally admitted women after a lawsuit. The policy that had seemed natural for 6 decades suddenly seemed discriminatory. A group called the National Organization for Women targeted the Plaza specifically. They staged protests. They filed complaints. The hotel eventually surrendered. The Oak Room opened to women. Some male patrons grumbled. Most adapted quickly. The change revealed something important. Traditions that felt permanent could shift quickly when pressure mounted. What seemed like eternal customs were actually choices. Choices that could be reconsidered when circumstances changed. This applied to more than gender policies. It applied to the entire structure of how the Plaza operated. The building received crucial protection in 1969. The New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission designated the Plaza's exterior as a landmark. This meant the facade couldn't be altered without commission approval. No one could strip the limestone. No one could replace the distinctive windows. The building's appearance was legally protected against owners who might prefer cheaper alternatives. The interior spaces received similar protection in 1986, the Palm Court, the Oak Room, the Grand Ballroom, the Terrace Room. These spaces were designated interior landmarks. Their architectural features couldn't be removed or significantly altered. The stained glass ceiling, the oak paneling, the decorative plasterwork, all protected by law. Landmark designation gave preservationists legal standing to challenge proposed changes. It created a process where experts could review plans before execution. It established that the Plaza belonged to the public in some meaningful sense, regardless of who held the deed. The building's significance extended beyond its commercial function, but landmark laws had limits. They protected physical spaces from destruction. They couldn't mandate maintenance. They couldn't require owners to invest in preservation. They couldn't prevent neglect. An owner who wanted to extract maximum value while spending minimum money could let protected spaces deteriorate slowly. The law protected against dramatic destruction. It offered less defense against gradual decay. The laws also couldn't protect intangible things. The culture that made the Plaza special. The staff knowledge accumulated across generations. The community feeling among permanent residents. The service standards that distinguished the hotel from competitors. None of this received legal protection. Owners could gut these things entirely, while technically complying with landmark regulations. By the mid-1980s, the Plaza had become a trophy property. Its fame exceeded its financial performance. The hotel struggled to compete with newer luxury properties. Modern hotels offered amenities the Plaza couldn't match without major renovation. Business travelers increasingly preferred convenience to prestige. The permanent residents provided steady revenue but